I have one question I want to field. Define truncation. And so I'm going to give my take, and then the panelists can add to it. When your meter has 8 digits, but your system only reads 6, right? If depending on where you move, what digits you're reading, you're losing a lot of money. So aligning, usually this mistake happens during a meter change out. And it's the process that it reads into your system, but different vendors have different things. So aligning that is the problem. And over the years, this meter was changed out. It was done right, but they didn't record it correctly. So you're losing a lot of money. When that happens on a commercial meter, a large commercial meter, we recently dealt with one at a brewery. They use a lot of water. It's a very successful brewery. And it was oops. And there was no going back to them and saying, you owe us this much money. That was like, thank you. Drew, you were going to say something?
I was just talking about the truncating. We have the same problem here at Middletown we ran into, and that's one thing that gets missed a lot of times. Our elected officials establish the water and sewer rates, and they establish rates, but they don't talk about truncating. And truncating simply means that do you read in thousands of gallons or do you bill people right to the gallon? Either way is fine. It all works out. But if you truncate to thousands, that means it drops off the last 3 zeros. That's what it means. What we found out very quickly is that we had some people being billed to gallons and some people being billed only in thousands. Well, that changes their bill, and it can make things, contentious sometimes. So, as we change out the meters, we are slowly changing everybody where we read to the gallon. But that's one of those things that gets missed. It's found out about by the staff people that are changing out the meters. And if they don't understand its implications, it can have a big implication on your bottom line. It's something that you do have to take into consideration. And, are you buying a billing system that gives you the option? Can you bill? Can you change it? Can you go from one to the other? One of the things we found out is when you bill to the gallons, being able to easily calculate your water bill based on the usage that you were given becomes a little bit more complicated because everything is based in thousands of gallons on most of the water rates that you see out there. You pay $36 for the first 3,000 gallons and $5.50 for every 1,000 gallon after that. Everything's in thousands. It's easy to calculate when you send them their consumption in thousands. But when you send their consumption going down to the individual gallon, you better have a computer to calculate what the bill is, because you're not going to be able to do it in your head. It's not going to work.
You're also going to get, I'm assuming your customer service people at that point are getting quite an earful. I have a question from if anybody of the panelists are familiar with the reports that came out in Kent County, Rhode Island. It was a meter change out, and auditors, I believe a third party was called in. Was anybody familiar with that here on the panel?
No, but I just wanted to quickly touch on something on truncation that I think should be shared. One thing that you need to remember is that with certain metering technologies, digits can be truncated at the register, at the radio, and at the billing system. So you want to be aware of what is coming into your billing system, because it could already be truncated and then you're truncating it again in your billing software. So that's just something to be aware of.
That we see that a lot.
And I just wanted to say, when you are underbilling somebody, you will never hear from them. You discover it, and that's you will never ever hear from them. If you're overbilling them with an error like this, you find out immediately. So those get taken care of right away. But you don't know what you don't know on the underbilling people using the factors.
Yeah, that's clear. The bias is always in favor of the benefit to the customer and the detriment of the utility, because if the customer is satisfied with the bill, let's just put it that way, they're less likely to complain, although we had a number who did that. The truncation is quite complicated. It's very easy to screw up. We found in our conversion that we had a restaurant that had been built for 1/100th of their actual use for like 3 decades. That was a lot of money. There were multiple commercial businesses and lots of homes, some of which, they were like snowbirds, and they go away and fly south in the fall. And we shut the water off and stop the billing and shut it off at the street. And then they come back in the spring and we turn it on, but somebody forgot to turn it back on in the building. So they've been getting free water without any bills for 5, 6 years. These are common things that are built into your database through understandable human error. And you want to squeeze all of that out. And the only way to do it is to really go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And ultimately, to really know what's going on, you get into the house, you evaluate the meter and the meter head and verify with photographs and eyeballs that it is what it is in the database. Otherwise, you're going to find these errors are built in.
Right. And in our example here at Middletown, it's a very small town. Everybody talks. It's like Mayberry. And having to explain to one customer why they are billed down to the exact gallon and their next door neighbor is billed to the thousands, I can tell you, that is not an easy conversation. You basically have to eat crow and say, well, we're not consistent in our billing. Well, you say that to a resident that's paying a bill and doesn't want to pay the bill in the first place. You don't necessarily get the happiest response back. So, the sooner you identify the issues and can start working to solve the problem and have a plan to solve the problem, the better off you'll be. One last thing I did want to throw in, I know we're getting late on time. My number one thing as far as any integrations, any upgrades or anything else is to have a very good IT department or an IT contractor. Middletown is very small. We don't have any in-house IT, but we have a great contractor. But you really, really need to have a good IT contractor because they're the ones that are going to make all these systems talk on your server. And you've got to have somebody that's involved. And if they don't know what they're doing, it is only going to exacerbate the problem. Number one thing, great IT support and a great understanding from your IT people of what you're trying to do. Otherwise, you will go back and you'll be redoing things and it will cause immense frustration.
We can put explanation points on that as we go from one utility to another. And besides the IT, it's the understanding of what your expectations are, aligning the expectations of what you expect that billing department to do or the meter reading software to do is critical. Just to give a feedback, because this ties in a little bit before, the Kent County became very political. A lot of articles, third party brought in, my bills are high, and the study came out, it was new meters. The meters were accurate. So what needed to happen is a prime example of educating the community before you do this. And it really turned into a nightmare. They were, vindicated. It was fine, but it was really a problem for a while. So again, that educating the consumer, I think, is key. The other thing we have a question is someone here has it happens to be a large sugar refinery that's using around 30 to 40 million gallons a year. Do you guys do tiered rates? Because I know Jeff up in Rutland, I'm assuming like Killington uses an incredible amount.
Well, Killington's not on they're on our sewer system, but not on our water system. So, okay. But we do have a major General Electric aircraft engine plant on the system, and they are huge. And we have a tiered rate, but that's the only exception. It's like if you use more than 1 million gallons a day, or not a day, but a certain amount. Yep. And they're the only ones who qualify, and they get a break on the rates. But other than that, everybody in the city, we serve 5 communities, and there are multipliers sometimes, especially on the sewer side. There are multipliers that apply differently depending on the contracts we have with the surrounding towns. But everybody's on the same rates, both sewer and water, within our home territory. And then sometimes those rates vary significantly in some cases, depending on where you are, but that's how we do it.
We have rates in Middletown. All of our residential customers are on tiered rates. We did it to promote conservation of water. Middletown sits on a heavy metabasalt. It's very hard to find high yielding wells. So finding additional water is always very difficult and very expensive. And the elected officials made a conscious decision that we're not going to design a water system so you can water your grass. We're not doing it. And if you do want to water your grass, knock yourself out, but you're going to pay these tiered rates. Let me tell you, it knocked them out. It knocked our water use and our peaks, they're gone. It's a very stable system. The rates, we set the first tier to start at 25,000 gallons, which 95% of our customers use below. So in normal usage, no one hits the tiers. You're going to hit the tiers, you start watering grass. And that's done intentionally. And it works very, very well. So, I mean, we do use the tiered rates. They work great in our particular system. The person talking about the sugar refinery, a lot of that's going to be based on your water system. Can you provide that kind of water easily? If you can easily provide the water and make money on it, knock yourself out. If you have a limited supply and you're struggling to, you know, keep up with your demand to different areas, then you're going to be more concerned about how much water everybody takes. So I think the question goes back to the person that asked that. You know, if you've got an unlimited supply of water and can provide it, I don't know that a tiered rate is necessary if it's easy to provide. If it's not, then you might want to consider it.
Yeah, we're working with a group down in Georgia right now, and they have a very tiered rate, commercial and residential. In the conversations with them, it was, you know, specifically they needed to tier a large consumer, like in this case, the sugar refinery, which obviously is employing a lot of people. Jeff, the place up in GE, you know, you need to make sure that you're accommodating them on the job side, you know, and I think this loops around the need for efficiencies, right? All the water losses that everybody we work with is having, the lost revenue, you know, this is where we need to tighten it up. And, you know, we are getting to a close. There's a couple questions that I'm going to, for people that are in here, you've asked some detailed questions, and I will actually be sending you an email directly. One of the people asked about the billing systems that you guys ended up using. Most of the panelists, I know which ones they're using, but we've done a really good job, you noticed, of not promoting any brand or demoting any brand. So I'll contact you directly on that. And also after the webinar, if anybody does have any questions, you can contact me directly because you have my email, and I will gladly do an introduction if you have specific questions. And also there will be a video will be coming out. So anybody wants to see it, somebody who missed it, but we will also be breaking it up into categories. So you don't need to watch 40, 50 minutes. You can see the issue. So as we switch a little bit and we go into wrap up mode, what I want to talk about, two things, is I want to talk about legacy, which is kind of teeing it up for, I'm going to say Jeff. Jeff just retired at the end of last year. Clearly his last year didn't go smoothly, but he did it. And all the issues that he had, he didn't leave like, oh, see you guys later. Dealt with a lot of press issues and budget issues. Rebecca, I'd like to hear from you about the difficulty, the money, where you see, again, the budgets to kind of fuel these companies that are always, the utilities are a company, right, that always gets left behind. Here in New England, you know, Eversource, I'm not supposed to mention utilities, huge increases, huge regulators fighting back and forth. None of the water utilities I'm working with have done 24% increase in 2 years. How do we get that money? So Rebecca, I'd like to push it to you on, if you were called in and utility saying, how are we going to make money? How are we going to improve things? What's your first assessment recommendations on a high level?
So outside of doing a lot of water meter implementation projects, I do a lot of work in water auditing as well. And I think the first step is really taking a look at your community's water loss. How much are you pumping into your system that you're not gaining revenue on, or that's just going straight into the ground? When you go through an AMI implementation and you're putting in the smart metering technology, you know, you have the confidence to know, like, I've cleaned up my billing system. I have highly accurate meters in the system. I can confidently say, you know, my losses are somewhere else, and I can direct that effort into leak detection or kind of cramping down on municipal use of hydrants. Versus if you're not very confident in the usage that's coming from your older meters, it's really hard to ask your customers to pay more. I mean, I know as a homeowner, I would be shocked if, you know, my community was losing 30% of its water and I'm seeing a 10% rate increase, you know, like you're being irresponsible and losing all this water and revenue. Why do I have to make it up? So I think one of the big things is just really instilling confidence in your billing system and your meters and instilling that confidence in your customers. And I think a lot of the newer technology with the leak alerts, the customer portals, it's, you know, customers really appreciate a heads up. Hey, we think you have a leaky toilet. We want to let you know, go solve it so you don't have to pay for that water that, you know, you're not really using. It's just leaking in your home, kind of letting your customers know, oh, wow, it's very accurate. They're looking out for me. You know, the more confidence you can instill in your customers, the more you can expect for them to kind of contribute and fight back a little bit less.
So as somebody who actually is involved in the billing and so forth, every quarter I get probably 3 to 5 people who are shocked with a huge bill that they didn't know they had this kind of consumption or these kind of leaks and so forth. It's heartbreaking. In some cases, it's the start to somebody losing their home. So that's the human factor of it. If we could get a better ability to make the people aware, I think that's huge.
Yeah, you were talking about water loss. I'll give you a quick story that a number of years ago when we started tracking our water loss, and when we first started calculating it, we were over 30% loss. So we went through a huge program of trying to figure out where it was coming from. You know what the number one source was? The town. None of our facilities were metered. And the logic was back then, why would we meter and bill ourselves? So we put meters on all of our facilities, our water plants, our sewer plants, town hall, the shops, you name it. Come to find out, as one entity, the town of Middletown uses more water than anybody else in the whole town. And that matters. We knock 10% off of that 30% number just by metering unmetered services. Now, we don't bill ourselves, but we are counting for it. And I can tell you, it shocked the heck out of me. I can tell you when I sent the report out to the elected officials and the mayor looked, he says, oh my God, we're the biggest water users in the town. We're wasting water. And I'm like, no, we're not wasting water. It's just what it takes to run these plants. And, you know, that was a whole education process as well. So, you know, unmetered services is a great place to find water loss. Let me tell you, you know, we didn't meter the fire company. We gave them the water free. Hey, hell, they're the fire company. Give them the water for free, of course. You know, when we went to put the meter in, you thought it was the end of the world. It's like, look, we're not going to bill you guys. We just want to account for the water. That's all. So that's something that you can think about. If you don't do that, I think you'll be very shocked at how much water is used by your facilities in and of themselves.
If I could quickly just speak to that financing thing. Our original proposal from the vendor that went under demonstrated that we could do this without having to raise rates. It would pay for itself. It was the hardware and the setup, the original installation was based on a separate and independent 15-year lease purchase for a little over $3 million. And those costs and the ongoing costs would be offset by the savings and the new revenue and some other savings, budgetary savings for doing that. After they went under, and in that year from hell, when we had to go through all of that stuff and replace all of that stuff and knit it all back together ourselves, we ended up with just a little under $200,000 a year below what we expected to spend for the vendor. So, you know, we actually cut rates. We were able to, you know, people were saying, it's going to raise our rates, blah, 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 blah. We actually cut our water rates a little bit. For the current year, the year coming up, we were able to lower them because of the savings we were able to show, both in terms of the operating cost of the system based on what we had expected and the additional revenues that we're now seeing coming in.
One of the things that I think everybody kind of touched on, and Rebecca, you started it, was it wasn't rip out and put in an AMI system. It was look at each component and make sure you're getting the maximum efficiency. And one of the things that we see is, again, and I've said it before, everybody that's on this call in my mind is under budgeted. whatever tool you've been given, you need to maximize it, right? And we buy a tool, we get a software program, you're understaffed. Who's really using all the aspects, right? I used to always joke with a VCR, I was the only one in the house who couldn't program it. I knew how to turn it on. You know, the kids would come over and they'd make it do all sorts of extra functions that added to the value. I didn't do it. What's very important of whoever your vendors are, if it's your billing vendor, your asset management, your supplier for your meeting, whatever it is, our recommendation is you get whatever you can get out of them to make your system do what you think you need it to do, and find out what it doesn't do and then budget. Is it with that vendor or is it with another vendor? Or is it bringing in an engineering firm saying, we got some problems? But quantifying all that, that water loss and where that billing is, to me, if you came to me and asked for $3 million, because I don't think that's good enough. And Drew, you brought it up earlier, and Jeff, you had to do it, is what's the business case behind it? It's one of the questions. What was the business case? And without a strong business case, in my mind, if you're in my town, I don't think they should give you $3 million of our money. We've got budget problems as it is, right? Show them that we can do it. And I believe that everybody that is on this call, there's efficiencies in your department, your utility, that can put money in your pocket, either through revenue increases or decrease costs. Our next series, and again, we're going to wrap up real quick. Again, anybody who has additional questions can contact us directly, but our next series, we'll be sending out a questionnaire. We're seeing a lot of issues with asset management and work orders. And we'll be discussing that. And also the providers that are out there that tie all this stuff together, literally from your SCADA performance, your billing, your customer service, and you now have all this tremendous amount of data. And if I just dump that on you guys, it's the old term information overload. What can you do with it? So finding, there's a few companies out there that do that. That's all they do. They don't build the sensors, they bring it all together. So any one of the utilities on this call, in my mind, look at your billing, making sure you're getting what you need. Truncation across the board. Again, we see 3 to 12% errors, and I'm talking 100,000 accounts. That's a lot of money. And Jeff, you brought up some, ones of whatever. And another shared experience is whoever, if they're on the call, that is responsible for rate increases, please go back into your system and make sure they were applied. We came across one that was 3 years, no rate increases, $4 million in lost revenue. Needless to say, that person, it was not good. So whoever's in your system, just do a double check to make sure that those rate increases have been applied. I want to thank our panelists. It was a pleasure. Prior conversations and getting ready for this and sharing your information. I know there's a couple panelists on here that have some white papers that are coming out that I will share with the attendees. As those are done, I will share that information. It's, again, it will always be meant to be informative, not as a sales pitch. And anybody on this who does have a question, contact me. You will be getting a slide deck that included not just the slides that were presented, but also a bunch of the talking points that were in here that you can reuse for your own town to help you out there. And we'll be sending you some other stuff. But again, thank everybody for sharing your experiences, the good, the bad, and different. And everybody have a great day.